Hello everybody, Anton here, and in this tutorial I'll go over my way of making rocks. So there are a couple of videos on YouTube that are pretty cool videos about how to make rocks in 3D code, though they quite often coupled on exporting them also in Zbrush and such. But here I'll just talk about my approach to rock sculpting in 3D code, which is different from what I've seen on YouTube. One of my first videos on my YouTube channel was a tutorial about making of these rocks and my approach of making rocks in Zbrush. So I know pretty well how to do it in Zbrush, and I'd say that in 3D code it is much easier. The only advantage that Zbrush got is the noise modifier, which is a big advantage by no means. So I do understand people who drop it in Zbrush to add some noise, but there are ways to get by in 3D code as well. So you can do it all in 3D code and still get a pretty decent result. And just before I start, I'll give away some freebies. So I'm giving away 3 codes for this Rocks asset pack if you want to check it out. Its promo code is Rock3D, and also 5 gift codes for this photo pack I've done on my recent trip to Russia. Essentially we were on a boat going around few small islands which had these really cool ragged cliffs, and every island had its own type of rock, which was really cool. And so the the gift code for that is rock photos. I'll give all the links inside the description, and I will also say when the gift codes will be out. If they you can check them because they usually are gone pretty quickly. Also, I would advise everybody, if you go out or hike or travel, make sure you bring your own camera, make photos. Photography is an important skill to have. To understand the cameras is an important thing to know for the computer graphics area, and just to build your own reference library of how the world around you is built, the geology of it is really important, and you can always sell it. Alright, we are back in 3D code, and let's start a new scene. New voxel sculpting, a big round sphere, and maybe a different material. It's a bit hard to pick the best material for the rocks. I think this gray will be alright. So I will be doing stuff I did a lot in Zbrush, and that was cutting through, just cutting all the extra bits, because rocks, they have these really sharp corners quite often, sharp like faces, and you want to achieve it by cutting out everything that you don't need. Right. And in Zbrush I have to use a clipping brush to do that, and clipping brush is it's not a real voxel sculpting like in 3D code. In Zbrush it's all polygons, they get smashed in the wrong direction sometimes. I mean, if you check out my tutorial on that, it's a whole 1 hour length 1 hour tutorial. You'll see me fighting with some of the Zbrush bugs, and this just clean cutting in 3D code is, I reckon, is just amazing. So I'm trying to figure out a better shape for the rock. I want to have it a bit of a more defined silhouette. And you might be thinking about, oh, we have this kind of all the stripes on our cuts that are an issue. Well, I mean, when you add extra noise on top, you can get away, you can hide all those stripes. I mean, they're a little bit annoying, I would admit. I'd rather have really clean cuts, but to get really clean cuts, you have to use the really just a rectangular tool, a rectangular cutting tool. That doesn't really produce you any artifacts, any steps, but we have steps here. That's alright. So let's cut a few small things. And there are a couple tricks in this 3D code just also impossible to replicate in Zbrush. Pretty much impossible. That trick is, I'll just make a couple more cuts. Okay, the trick is the good old split tool, which I now mention probably in every video. So the thing is that if you look at the rock, there are a lot of this type of slicing that happening in the real life. The bit of the rock will slice off and will fall down. Let's see if I have any. Yeah, right here. Yeah, it's better seen here. It slides off the rock in a really sharp way. So if you use a split tool with a depth limit, and this lasso. Okay, we need to change the width of the split border. That's -1. Should be good. Yep. Nope. I think I don't have enough depth. Okay, this will be alright. I don't like it it's all rounded. I'll just make it rectangular and really sharp. Okay, I have this part right, then I just move it, and I just can slide it a little bit. Right, and then I just do it again. And again, and again. I think it goes through all the volumes. I don't really want that. It also creates these real cracks. They're not. They're genuine cracks. They're not painted. Like usually you do a brush and you try to paint a crack. Let's put an alpha. And typically they just don't look genuine that much. They look okay, and you can get away with them in most cases. But if you want to have something really cool, really good, it really pays for itself to go and do a split tool and split cuts. Right, so see my shading. Right now I'm thinking that I'm a bit low on the resolution, so I'll just up the resolution a little bit on all these tools. So I'll use the raise up. It's a double. It's an instant doubling of the resolution. It does get heavy though, because you do so many splits and such that you create a lot of sub layers, and gets heavier and heavier. With interactive lighting on, becomes even more heavier. I'll just up the resolution on the leftover pieces and I come back. Yeah, let's just keep on doing the split. The splits, I have my depth limit off. That actually might be even better than having it on sometimes. Well, you kind of have to experiment with different settings. And yeah. Let's try a lasso split to make it a little bit more natural. So we have a good combination of straight lines and curvy lines. And then just move them and rotate them slightly. So the thing is kind of to be a bit cautious about, right, is about having really deep cracks. Then the problem with that is, well, if you do a low poly, it becomes a real problem to bake that stuff. But it's also so cool that I'd rather make a really deep crack and then duplicate the layer, Shift D my hotkey, and just maybe put it in just to fill it in a little bit, so you still have that crack, but maybe not that deep for the baking purposes. But for the sake of this tutorial, I'll just keep on doing a free sculpt without thinking too much about normal baking and such. Also, I don't want to do a full tutorials about like how to create a finished asset, because there's so many tutorials out there on how to finalize the model from high poly to low poly that I just don't think it's a good, good way of spending my time, just reiterating the same ways as everybody's done like 1,100 times before. So I'll just want to focus in my tutorials on the stuff that I have personally discovered in 3D code, because there's so many ways of approaching the same thing, and I see those ways in watching other people's tutorials as well online on YouTube. And I pick or people recommend in the comments section, they recommend their own ways of doing it, and I pick on that as well. And that's really cool. So that's what I really want to, learn myself and teach other people, is the new ways of doing stuff, not the how do you bake a normal map. That's like early 2000s question, really. So I'll just be trying to create a pretty rock without any real consideration for baking. I should probably just concentrate on one side to save some time. And obviously then you can pick one of those parts and start going using Vox height, for example, and start cutting few parts, making these undercuts, which are really cool, and add a more natural look, because essentially the bigger piece slides, then the small parts of the bigger slice starts to slide off, and you get this forever motion. I think I got the depth limit on this guy. Well, that's alright. I've just switched to rectangular. And just experimenting, really seeing how the rectangular looks. I mean, this just freedom of the sculpting is so cool. It's so much better than what you can do with a clipping or trimming brush, or really clipping brush in Zbrush. Just turn on the depth limit and cut. So feel like there are like a few cracks that would be great to have here. Look at this, they look so cool, they look so real, and we can't achieve it by brushing it, you know, because that's a real cut, like in real life. You get a real cut, not a painted on top crack. That's big. That's big for making it look top quality. And you know, some people could ask, like, why would you even try to create these high definition rocks if you have photo scans nowadays, or you have substance design and all such? Well, really often when you create a photo scan, you only have a part of the rock. If you want to make a bigger rock, you have to be able to create a bigger cliff. But think about it, if you're making a game and you want your rocks to be slightly stylized, and you cannot really get it from, and you cannot really get the stylization level from a photoreal, scan. It's 100% photoreal. And by the way, I've done scans myself. I'll probably do some tutorials about it, and because you can do other cool stuff with scans. Like you can create masks for in 3D code, and it's really valuable skill to know how to scan and process stuff. It's just you also need to know how to sculpt it. And again, if you're doing a game which is slightly stylized, but you want to make it at the same time be believable, think like Team Fortress, something like that. You gotta know how to sculpt rocks. It's really common asset. Funny thing is that there are ways to procedurally generate mountains with Vault Machine, for example, but there still hasn't been invented a way to generate rocks. You can generate them. Some of them, I've done some pretty cool noise generation in Substance Design. I've done cool generation in 3ds Max. You can do quite a bit of stuff in 3ds Max, but you also have a whole lot of limitations with those tools. You can create generic rocks, but if you want to add a rock with a character, you pretty much cannot do it. Right, I think I've got a lot of cuts. So let's try and check out how it looks rendered. Alright, it's good enough. So what I wanted to do now is I wanted to add some noise, right? So Zbrush got a really cool noise generator. Well, 3D Code unfortunately doesn't have it, but there's still ways of quick, there's still ways to quickly add details on top. So I found that the Smudge Tool is pretty cool. If I use, I've been using some just cracks that are coming, by default with 3D Code, delivering a pretty good result. And it's not really doing it right now. It's a bit strange. This Smudge Tool was. Alright, so Smudge Tool didn't work as it's supposed to be. And it's a bit strange because I've just been warming up before this tutorial and it was doing the stuff I wanted to, but I figured out that Move Tool can do what I wanted to. So I picked the Move Tool, picked it through all the volumes, and then you start to pick the alpha, the correct alpha. You start to move the stuff in and out, and it starts to pretty much add the noise. How much do you want? Inside Zbrush, I was a big fan of a crumple brush. But before I say that, what I want to do is I have the root volume layer that's kind of visible every time. If I try to isolate any of the cuts, it will still be there, the main original cut, this big shape. So what I want to do is I want to split it out and create an empty root like layer. So it will be just like group layer. And now I can hide it and have this guy here. Right. Because otherwise I cannot just isolate one piece. It shows me the root piece as well, the volume 249. Right, so I have this piece and there's a crumple brush inside Zbrush which is in fact will look very much like this. Let's pick a different alpha. I think this one. Something a bit more random. So that kind of what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to break the this stuff. It's a bit like crumple, moving it all around. Yeah, definitely the more alphas you have, the better. I think right now I'm actually painting some stuff that's not even visible, right? So I'll just unhide it all and go back. You can see using the move tool, it really adds an extra randomness to all those cracks. Makes it look way more natural. I'm just pushing and dragging it all around. I wonder if this material is a bit too shiny to be understandable. Let's try a quick render. Okay, yeah, I'd say it's a bit too shiny. Let's try and apply. I light shaded the whole piece, and now it's way too white, but we can adjust the brightness. Somewhat better, somewhat better. Oh yeah. Yeah, it's way better now, it's way easier to see what's going on. So yeah, that like moving this stuff around is definitely adding a lot. Alright, so one of the other things is a pretty cool that you might use sometimes, or you might not use it, you never know. Well, it's a split tool. I'll just save before I proceed. It's a split tool used with a stencil. Right, so you can create a whole bunch of small cuts. imagine a type of rock that is extremely porous, extremely layered, and I'm just thinking what what alpha we could use here. Maybe something like lines. Let's see what it does. Okay, it didn't do anything because I don't have it through all volumes. Yep, that's it. So we've just created a new infusion of a new geological material inside this rock. It helps quite a bit in real life. Maybe here it's way too perfect, right? It's way too well, way too even. So what I do, I'll draw my own mask. Yes, I've just painted this little mask in Photoshop. That should be good enough. It's about 1000 by 1000 pixel document. We can use even 100 by 100 by 500 by 500. Okay, so I have it here. I've added it to the stencils panel, and it's not a tileable mask, which I really don't care. I want to I'll just push it out, in and out, and you can see here the lines might have been a little bit too thick, and I'm thinking about actually rotating this guy, and I don't remember how to rotate. Oh yeah, this go. There it goes. Okay, so I'm cutting through. Let's see what happens. It's a pretty interesting spot. Yeah, of course, because there's not enough resolution to get these steps. Looks like if anti-aliasing is off, which it's all really resolution dependent. But I really want to for you guys to see my point that you can have a whole bunch of cuts, limited to amount of cuts, and it creates some really complex rock shapes, like more than anything, as complex as your heart desires. Okay, just trying to figure out which layer is corresponding to this particular cut. I think that one, let's do it and cut it inside. So the cool thing about high poly is you usually don't really care that it's broken to 1,000 pieces, right? You just want to bake it down. But if you want to export this as a one solid model, you can just merge the whole tree. And let's save and merge it together. So I hit on the top layer and hit on the merge this up tree. Alright, so the resolution on that layer was not really enough to capture all the detail of the cracks and such. So what we can do, we can go back and do it a couple times. Didn't crash, it's good. It usually doesn't crash actually. 3D code sometimes is quite stable in many instances. So what I was trying to do right now, I was trying to use the res sample hotkey, but because I didn't have any mesh inside this layer, I couldn't do any resampling, so I had actually to go and do res up. And that, that density probably is still not enough, but let's see what it does. You can see already at the bottom that it's pretty dense mesh. Yeah, it's actually pretty enough. You obviously still have that step in artifacts happening here. Well, yeah, something to deal with. Right. Also we can think about breaking this mesh in thousands of pieces, you know, making a whole bunch of holes or something like that. It's all possible in 3D code. Let's try to render it out. I have this sealer that shows through when every time I hit a render. It's mainly because I have a real-time render ticked here. If I untick it, well, it's still there. You have to untick it, go into Sculpt, and go back into render and tick it again. Yeah, then you don't have that kind of shading. It's probably artifact of this particular version. 4.26. I should really download a new version and upgrade to that one. Yeah, so I think all the original cracks that I made myself, they look pretty cool. These steps, they don't look that great, but that was a cool technique that I wanted to show off. And that's about everything I wanted to show about how to approach rock sculpting in 3D code using the tools that are only available in 3D code. And thank you for watching, and ask me any comment. See you next time.